Hello, everybody. Mike Donahue here with my friend and your friend.
Brian May. How are you, everyone?
He lives in Bellevue. I'm up in South Dakota right now. I have did a bunch of schools. Last week. I was at Wood River. Actually, that was the high school where Mr. Scott Frost, who used to be the coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers and played for them, won a national championship. He went to that high school. I was there for a couple of assemblies, and it was great. And then I went to Shickley. Shickley, you have to say that. Sounds like you're Sean Connery. I used to be here with Shickley. Shickley. Anyways, I was there for a couple of days. Flew to Chicago, hung out there at Vernon Hills High School with some amazing kids. They do a every year they invite me to do the freshman orientation. It's called the RITE assembly. It's awesome, and five seniors usually share, and then I share. It's really good. So I was there, and then I flew back to Omaha, then drove up last night to South Dakota and did a teacher training in the Watertown area. So that's where I'm at, and I have to speak at the high school that I spoke at today at the training on Monday, and then another high school down the street. And so instead of going home, I'm up in a hotel hanging out, and so that's why I'm here doing the podcast. So those of you that have been, kind of tuning in and watching us, do me a favor and do this right now. Yes, I want you to like and subscribe to our channel and share it with others because we're getting some momentum here. We're trying to talk about things that matter to you and matter to this whole idea of the church doing it right, doing it wrong, talking about the abuse. There's more scandal this week now. Every week there's more scandal. And so, Brian, I want to throw it to you because we want to tackle the subject of putting on forms. One of the teachings that Jeannie did quite a bit, it was kind of a hallmark of her ministry. It was a main teaching point
Yeah.
was putting on forms. And she used the illustration of when you're building a house, you put up the forms and pour the cement, and hopefully, once the cement hardens, you can take the forms down. But really, it was fake it till you make it, right? So talk about that and why that's so dangerous for the church world.
Yeah. I can remember when, we first got talked into going to the church, and somebody told us that, oh man, she's teaching this great teaching. It's called building forms. It's this fantastic thing. And I can remember Cheryl, we were married at the time, but we went and we listened to the teaching, and it was just like, that doesn't feel right to me. This idea that, that you put up something on the outside, you put up this veneer on the outside to somehow, eventually, from the outside in, you become a different person or a good person, whatever that is. I was watching a television show last night, and one of the characters in the show was sort of just having this crisis in her life, and she was falling in love with this guy, and she called up a friend of hers, and she said, can you tell me, am I a good person? And I thought, wow. I'm just sitting there in the moment thinking, wow, what is the answer to that question for everyone? And it really kind of lays out, I think, the crisis that we all have in terms of our identity and who we are, and what the environment we live in says to us. And I was thinking a little bit about what that felt like in church when really, at least in my experience, hopefully some of you listening out there had a better experience than I have, but in my experience, there was a code, right? There was a code that you lived by. There was a certain set of standards and behavior, things that you did, things that you said, things that you didn't do, things that you didn't say. And, you could have just been, full of hatred and bitterness and all kinds of poison. But, if you had that right veneer on the outside, you're all right.
Right. It's like I always used to tell my guys, when I was a youth pastor, that I don't really care what it looks like. The church teaches you what a Christian should look like. I
Yeah.
mean, let's just stop right there. That's what form building is. Listen, this is what it should look like. If this isn't in your heart right now, just fake it, act like you're doing that, and maybe someday it'll take. And that's just ridiculous, right? It's You're dealing with real people, and you're dealing with people that have had, a story and experiences, and they've got some trauma in their life and bitterness that came along with some of that trauma, and hatred, and confusion and doubt, and I mean all kinds of things. And when you just reduce Christianity down to behavior modification, it really sells it short. It's not what it is, right? The gospel is supposed to be like a phosphorus grenade, go into your heart and do work, and change you from the outside in, right? Not like, to me, I always tell, this is what I teach when I'm speaking in schools, that I don't really care what you're doing. It's why you're doing it, right? The church doesn't care why you're doing it. The church doesn't care about the belief that goes before the behavior, right? Because behavior follows belief. So if you just tell someone to change their behavior, but they don't change their belief, what are you doing? Right? You're just teaching them how to be compliant and clones to whatever your set of rules, whatever the social construct of your church is. And it's pretty general. I mean, or it's pretty standard, but there are specifics for different churches, right? There are
Oh, right.
some churches that are like, okay, it's okay to drink, and some churches like you can't dance, and some are real strict. And as long as you look this certain way, you're going to fit into our club, you know. And but we don't care, why, we don't want to really discuss, you know why this might be a problem for you. We just want you to stop doing those things. Here, put on a form, act like you're okay. I always hated that. I thought that was just stupid.
Yeah. 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 I was never. I, I was never into that. I don't think I was ever cut to be that way. I know it's hard for people to believe, but there was a time in my life when I had hair, um, and
I remember that. It was long too. We need to get a picture.
I
Actually, we're going to show a picture if we can find it.
I had a lot. I had a lot of it, and
There it is. Look at that. Whoa.
that was that was kind of, I don't know. Some of us just have this gene that says that, okay, you're supposed to look this way and that way. Well, I'm not going that way. But I mean, to be truthful, you're just identifying with a different crowd, right? So we all suffer that. But put be, poorly told story to make a point. We're all looking to belong and to identify, right? And when the not so subtle message is okay, this is how you belong and this is how you're identified as part of the group, as you have this certain these sets of behaviors, and the real danger to that, and I'm sure people out there listening have felt this and have experienced this. I experienced this. It's like, okay, I know how to act and I know how to put on the act, to put on the mask, the persona, but I know it's not coming from inside me. I know I've got things that are inside of me that aren't being dealt with and that I'm repressing. I'm not dealing with them. I'm not being transformed. I'm repressing those things. And, I'm not a psychologist and I didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn Express last night, but
I'm in one right now,
oh, all
actually.
right. All right. So
That's
maybe
why
yours
this
is
is such a
closed.
great podcast.
So, but that is just not good for you as a human being. And
Right.
and that's not what I think most people are looking for in a true and genuine faith experience. And when that seems to be so common, in the church world, in the Christian church world, it seems to me that it's not the people who are struggling that are missing the mark. It's the organization that's missing the mark.
Right. And because those people actually are human beings. I'm talking about the pastors and leaders that are propagating this kind of teaching, right? This fake it till you make it thing. They don't, right? They can walk around. What that teaches you is to, again, put on that image, and as long as it looks a certain way, then you don't have to work on your heart. right? Because no
Yep.
one's calling you to accountability,
Right.
right? You can just walk around and act like you really love people when you don't. I've heard this quote this week when I was at this school that I was speaking at Vernon Hills. They have kids talk too after I'm done, and this kid started his speech with this quote. This is great. It says Maya Angelou said, "I don't trust people who don't love themselves yet say they love you." And then there's an African saying that I love this. It says, "Be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt." That is so good. That's the church, right? A naked person, people that don't have it in their heart, but they're acting like they do, and they're really naked. They don't know they are. They think they've got, like in the book of Revelations, it talks about that, right? You're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. You don't know that. You don't know that you are. And then you're trying to offer people shirts. You're trying to offer people to cover up their sin when really what you want to offer people is the remedy for sin and to deal with their own heart. But that's going to be messy. That means that your church or your youth group or your Bible study or whatever is going to be messy. They're going to say some things that are going to be out of bounds, and they're not going to look a certain way, and you got to be willing to do that, because that's the real change. That's when belief changes. I can get anybody to change the behavior by giving them incentives, right? Here's the incentive.
Right.
I will love you tenaciously. You'll be part of my club. This is why this is an exclusive club. Here, you can be part of us if you do these things. Yeah, you can get people to change that way. How do you get someone to change their attitude or their some of their goals in life or their core values of what they believe about people, right? If they don't love themselves, how in the world are they going to love people, right?
Right.
So you have to be able to allow Jesus into your darkness, into your sin, into your mess. If you just put on a show with him, you're a Pharisee. You're just a fake.
Yeah. You know, you can't give away what you don't have, right?
Right.
And you can't give away transformation. You can't lead people in transformation. You can't walk with them. I hate the word lead because you're not leading. You're walking with people through their life, through their stuff, right? And you can't do that if it's not really authentically in you, and I think that most people are smart enough and adept enough to tell the difference between what's real and what's inauthentic. The problem is that a lot of us come into those situations. I mean, we have real needs. We really want to belong to something. We're really looking for something, and it's not. It's opaque, right? It's not so transparent that you see it right away, and it sort of gets into your system. But back to that point of don't take a shirt from a naked man. You really can't. You can't give something to someone that you don't have. And you talk about this a lot. I know you talk about this all the time in your daily grind. But it really comes back to that. If you can't love and value yourself, if you don't understand your own inherent value, and in the Christian context, if you don't understand your inherent value to, God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, you are not going to be able to give that away to other people.
Absolutely. And that's what's so disappointing about the church is if they'll give up on you if if you don't come along. They'll give you some rope, right? They'll give you
Right.
some time to put those forms on and act a certain way, and then at a certain point, you've got to act like that. Like you've got to put on this show, and if you don't, then then they're going to ostracize you. Or in my situation, when I went through a divorce, I was blown away. There was a lot. I'm not going to unpack that again, but it was horrible for me, and I went off the rails a little bit, and I didn't act like I did. I wasn't. The behavior was different, and because I was having a belief issue, I was having a problem with my heart. I felt like I was betrayed. I felt, not just from my marriage, but from friends, and then and those people that saw my behavior, some of them walked away from me. Some of them did not, thank God, and those are my friends today. But there was a guy at our reunion that Pastor Hooker's uh, retirement party, or whatever, came up to me, and he wanted to be, he's a pastor in Florida now, and he went 5 years without talking to me because I didn't look like a certain way anymore. Then he wanted to come up to me in front of everybody and act like we were all old friends. I'm not doing that stuff anymore. Like I'm not playing that game. Like you be my friend on the worst day, or don't be my friend. Right? Don't give me the privilege of process. Walk me through some of that darkness. Don't just ostracize me because I don't look like you anymore. I'm not tolerating that anymore from people. I'm just not.
You really find out what people are made of when things get difficult, when things get messy, when things when things blow up. Um, Cheryl and I have friends that have been burned in the church and had bad experiences and have had various reactions to them. Some of them have just said screw it, I'm going to walk away from it. And I mean, I guess we kind of did that as well. But um, what I would like to think is that people, no matter what your reaction to all of this is, no matter where you're at, that that you still know that there are authentic people out there that love you and that care about you. And if you don't know that, then it's no wonder that the kinds of things that we're seeing in the church are going on. Um, I want to go back to something we were talking about a minute ago, if I could. We were talking about um, just this whole idea of putting it all on the outside, but it's still bubbling up on the inside. At the beginning of the podcast, you talked about there's yet another scandal this week. I mean, it's going to be like 2024 is the year of the year of major meltdown.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's like every time you turn around, you see it. Well, think about it. Think about that in the context of what we're talking about. Could it be that what we're seeing is sort of the end of this ability to put up this image on the outside, but not deal with anything on the inside? And it's finally catching up to folks. And all of those
Right.
things they've repressed and all of those things they haven't dealt with. And all the guilt. And I mean, just imagine the amount of guilt and shame that a person must carry in that situation. And
Right.
it's all coming to head, it's just it's bubbling out. I've got to believe that has something to do with it. And it's not that um, it's not that faith is useless. It's that path that fake is useless, right? Faith
Right.
isn't useless. Fake is useless.
Fake is useless. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a game. And I hesitate to bring this story up, but we talk about Judy Mayo a lot, and she's the one that taught, that form building thing. Well, when all this stuff, I confronted her one time. She came out to speak at Bellevue Church. I wasn't working for her at the time. She came out to speak, and I asked Gary if I could drive her to the airport. And when I wanted to use that time in a loving way to confront her on that fakeness, right? On what I saw. And I had specific things. Those people that accused me of not using Matthew 18, before I released that book, that's crap, because I did. A lot of times I confronted her. In this specific time, I confronted her on specific, things that she had done, and she was really angry with me. But once we crossed this threshold where she started to really get honest and cried and said there isn't a day that goes by that she doesn't have intense self-hatred.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that. How can you tell people you love them? I don't trust people who say you love me when you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
Right? It's like she does everything she can do to put on those forms herself. But the problem is that she doesn't love herself. And I remember telling her that. I said, Jeannie, get out of the ministry. Take a couple of years and just go be a person. Just go be God's kid. Go let him love you with no strings attached. Not you have to put on a show for people. You have these expectations from the church world to be a superstar. Just be you, because that's what's going to be really good for your mental health. Is going through that process. And she never did that, as far as I know. But bottom line is that's what we all those forms and putting on a show is just self-righteousness. And like you just said, it comes to an end at some point. You can't do that anymore. and and you get found out, you get exposed. And I would rather just say, look, this is who I am. I'm in process. I'm a sinner. I need Jesus Christ every single day. I'm as righteous as Jesus Christ is right now, only because of what he did on the cross, not because of what I did today at a school, or you know how many followers I have on Instagram or whatever. That's so ridiculous, right?
Right.
I'm I am wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I need the real cover. I need a real shirt. I need and the only covering I have is the gospel of Jesus Christ, the what he did on the cross for me. It has nothing to do with what I did today or what I'm going to do next week in schools. That's just a byproduct of this love that I have for myself that I get from him. And that comes out of that. I don't have to put on a form. It's who I am. But it came through a lot of falling down, getting back up, realizing that he still loves me even though I'm a mess and I'm a sinner, and I make mistakes. He still loves me. I have value because of that. That is it. That is it. There's no forms here.
Yeah.
This is who I am.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I appreciate about our relationship is that we both are, I think, have found someone that we can be completely authentic with. And it's not because we're, sucking up to each other. It's that we're at a place where we realize how important this is, just like you make a comment. So I'm not a preacher. I'm not a theologian. I read a lot of theology books when I was coming out of my old, going through my deconstruction period. But and I can't take credit for this. I heard somebody say it, but I think it's a really profound statement: is that the Bible doesn't begin in at Genesis 3, with the fall of Adam. The Bible begins with Genesis 1, with God creating something and saying, this is good. And um, I firmly believe, I'm not trying to mess with anybody's faith tradition out there, so y'all believe what you want to believe, but, this whole idea that we were somehow created flawed or whatever, really didn't come along until about the 3rd century with Augustine of Hippo, and he was just really trying to explain why people do bad things. And my personal opinion is he missed the mark there, but good try. But anyway, but back to this idea that the Bible begins in Genesis chapter 1, when God made everything, in the story. We read the story, and on the 7th day, he rested and he looked and he said, you know what? I did good. This is good. And to me, that's a powerful thing to contemplate. Um, that if you're a Christian, you believe you're made in the image of God. Well, if you believe you're made in the image of God, I think that story should say something to us. I think that tale of creation in Genesis 1 should say something to us, and help us down the path to maybe considering that maybe there is, maybe I do have some inherent value in me. Maybe I really am at my core. The woman in this show asked, am I a good person? I was talking to Mike on the phone. I'd say my answer to every person that would ask me that question is yes, you're a good person. Now, maybe you're messed up right now. Maybe you don't believe that, and that's manifesting in your life. Maybe you're doing harmful things to yourself or other people. Those things aren't good, but that wasn't the question. The question was, am I a good person? And to me, that goes beyond saying, am I behaving right? It's saying something much more deep and much more profound. So, I mean, if you're out there and you're wrestling with those kinds of things, I want to encourage you just to, maybe take a few minutes and think about that a little bit.
I agree with that. I agree that everybody has potential to receive God's love, and that revelation that we have value no matter what. is what I talk about in schools. It's probably what's going to save the country if people. I mean, that sounds really, altruistic, but I really think that if people really understood their true value, it would change everything, right? It would change everything. It would change the way they treat themselves and others. And but that's what God offers. That's what that whole thing, that whole Genesis story. And you said it when we were talking on the phone. I like this when you said they walked away from their identity. They made that choice. When they left the garden, God, had them leave the garden because they ate the apple, but basically they walked away. They walked away from their identity and who He is, and that's the journey. That's the whole message of the cross, and the message of
Right.
the gospel is to come back to that position that that fellowship with God, that we are worthy of Him because of God, because of Jesus Christ.
Right. Right. My take on that, again, my take, uh, they forgot who they were. Right. That's the point of
Yeah.
the story to me. They forgot who they were.
Right.
And, God in his mercy, it's clear. I mean, even if you read the scripture, it's clear. He put them out of the garden for their own protection, not for punishment, but they forgot who they were. And that's what happens to us. I mean, Mike, I forget who I am. And I have
Yeah.
to come back to that. That's a lifelong thing. And
Yeah.
the sad part about it is that in some of the church experiences that you and I have had, there's not even anybody telling us who we are. They're telling us how to be.
Right.
They're not telling us who we are.
Right.
And that's tragic in my mind, and it
Right.
completely misses the point of being any part of a faith community. Um,
Yeah, and I think if you're watching this right now and that's where your confusion is, and that's where you kept trying to be what they wanted you to be. You kept jumping through those hoops and doing those things and trying to please people, and you never felt like you were part of the club or part of the group, or you think they're still talking about you, and they may be. Well, Jesus is talking about you. He is. He's talking about you right now. He's planning your comeback. He's putting things in place so you will come back, not to the church, but to Him, and to your identity, to your true identity, which is son or daughter of God, right? Child of God. That's the spirit He put in us, that spirit that cries Abba Father, that cries Daddy, right? That wants that intimate connection with our Father. Don't go back to the church. I mean, go back to a church if that's going to work, but that's not the point.
right.
The point is to go back to Him, and sometimes the church gets in the way. I mean, I would say to people when they say, "Well, I'm going to go back to church," be careful, be careful, because you can get right back into that religious crap again, and that's not what God wants. He wants you to be close to Him, and those of you again that have tried so hard and didn't make the mark, well, the Bible says, Jesus said, "My burden is light. I don't have a bunch of rules for you. Just come to me. Just come to me. Talk to me. Talk to me about what's bothering you. Talk to me about the process. What's going on inside of you. Talk to Him." And that's been the best part of my faith journey, is
Yeah.
just that I have that connection with Him.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife tells a funny story about me. There was a morning that I was out on the deck. She heard me out on the deck yelling. and, and uh, she said, what were you doing out there? I says, well, I was talking to God. It's like, at some point, and not because I'm a genius, because I'm a knucklehead, but at some point I figured, what the hell? He knows anyway. I mean, if God knows
Right.
everything, then let's just be honest. Let's
Yeah.
be honest,
Yeah.
and and let's be honest with ourselves. And
Yeah.
and I know folks who, I mean, they've had such a bad experience with Christianity. They don't want to even hear the name Jesus. They don't want anybody to talk to them about the Bible. Uh, you know, and this is really going to trigger some folks. And I'm sorry if this is going to trigger you, but you know, God's bigger than that. You know, if you can't
Absolutely.
put that name on it, you know, there's still a truth in the idea that there's some inherent goodness inside of you, and that you are loved and valued. But call it by whatever. But that he got my opinion is God is bigger than that, right? He doesn't have to have. You don't have to have his name on your T-shirt. He doesn't have to get credit. So,
Right. Right. And you Christians out there that want to argue that right now and say, well, there's only one way to God. You're stupid because I'm sorry, you're not stupid, but maybe you are stupid. I don't know. But that's stupid because
uh,
the identity marker that Jesus used for true faith is depart from me, I never knew you. The people that acted a certain way but didn't really have it in their heart, those are the ones he said get away from me. But the ones that visited him in the hospital and went to the prisons and cared for the sick and clothed the naked, like truly clothed them, that those are the ones that have true faith because it was in them. It wasn't a show.
yeah,
And so that's the identity marker that Jesus uses
yeah,
to identify his own, is people who cared about the least of these,
yeah,
went to the messed up places. So
yeah.
hey, Brian, this has been really good. Close us out, buddy.
Good talk. I just want to say whether you're a Christian or not, I think one of the coolest things about Jesus is he was always calling out to people who thought they were perfect and better than everybody else and let everybody else know about it. And I mean, I can get on board with that, right?
Yeah, I'll follow that.
So,
Oh, wait a minute, I do.
all right, all right. Well, it's been a good,
All right.
been a good 32 and a half minutes.
Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody. Keep checking in with us. Like us,
Please like us.
subscribe, spread this word. We are doing God's work. I think.
Having
I don't know.
fun.
Who knows? All right. All right.